All right. It is 12:30. It is one-on-one with Can and GSC. Hello to everyone tuning in. I'm so excited to welcome you to another session of one-on-one. My name is Moises Villada, Associate Director at the Gender and Sexuality Center. My pronouns are he, him, and him, his. Welcome to the show. Ada,
Hi,
welcome.
everybody. My name is Ada Cheng, and I'm the Education and Outreach Specialist for Campus Advocacy Network. We made it another session, another interview. I'm so happy, so excited. This is like we survived all the prep work to be here, and I'm so glad that Moises is here with me. We create this project. We want to build a community through vulnerability and intimacy, one person at a time. We don't know each other's stories, so it is so important to build a stronger foundation and community that we know each other better. And what better way to do that through storytelling? And I believe this is our fourth interview. And I'm so excited, and each guest brings something so unique and fantastic for our interview. And today, I'm going to introduce our special guest, Veronica Arreola. She is the director for UIC Las Ganas. Gosh, UIC has really this acronym, right? So let me read it to you. Latinas gaining access to networks for advancement in science, right? And this is amazing. This is so important, connecting students, particularly students of color, with science and engineering. And that's a topic that we talk a lot at WRC and Ken. Veronica has a degree in biological sciences and also a minor in women's and gender studies. And she's a published writer, fantastic storyteller, and also is on the board for New York, has published in New York Times and Beach Media. So she's multi-talented, has passed on so many different things. Veronica, welcome. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. This is a pleasure. I miss seeing both of you.
Moises, you have the first question. Go ahead.
Yes, I'm so excited. You know, Veronica, I've known you for a while, and
Yes.
I just love getting to know you even more every time we connect and get to do some work. Part of our conversations today is to really allow the campus community to get to know us a little bit more in different ways. And one of the first questions we always ask is, what were you like as a student? You're also connected to UIC. You're an alum. So
Yeah.
I think that adds also a different kind of experience. And then also, you know, I think everybody wants to know a little bit about what were you like as a student? And this could also be a student maybe when you were younger, whatever resonates with you. How were you? What were you like as a student?
People tell me I'm pretty much the same as when I was a student. I was a big nerd as a kid, always into science and math, as well as writing. Almost everything I've ever wanted to be when I grew up had something to do with science and math. When I was an undergrad at UIC, we had a honors biology program, so I was engaged in that. But then I immediately got engaged with our biology colloquium, which is an undergraduate run course, and moved up the ranks to that, and was the student coordinator for that my junior year of college. I was also a museum rat. I had a fellowship at the Field Museum and spent most of my undergrad years in the basement doing fish research on fish locomotion.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
What was the interest around science? How did that how did that start? What sparked that interest, that passion, that path?
It's just a natural tendency for me to be really curious and to be outside. My favorite thing as a kid was when it was raining, to get outside and be in the rainstorm, digging into mud, climbing a tree in my front yard.
Veronica, I want to ask you. I didn't say this, but in your last sentence for your bio, it said you're the first generation college student in your family to get a bachelor degree and a master degree. What was it like as the first generation student, right? That part. On top of that, navigating a male dominated field. So two questions. One is what was it like to be the first generation student in your family? And the other is how did you navigate a field that is dominated by by men, for example? Go ahead.
So yes, I was the first one in my family to go to a 4-year school and earn a 4-year degree. My mom actually went back to school for her nursing degree while I was in high school. So I had this like very small window where I could see what it meant to be a college student and having to study chemistry, biology, and the work it would take. But in terms of navigating the application process, I went to Barrington High out in the suburbs. I was in a space that was very supportive of going to college.
Is it me? I think Veronica, are you cut off?
I think we might have some technical.
Yeah, Veronica, can you hear me? Moises, can you hear me?
I can hear you. I think we can probably reset a minute.
So it might be Veronica on your end.
There we go.
Oh,
okay. All right.
I'm back.
Oh,
perfect.
No problem. This
Perfect.
is what happened at the virtual space. This happens.
I know.
And it's about accepting imperfections.
Yes.
It's
and
totally
readjusting and
That's the last thing
adjusting.
I said.
That's the last thing you said was your mom also went back to nursing school when you were in high school. So start from there.
Yeah. So I have a lot of really fond memories of us doing our homework together at the kitchen table. Her doing her chemistry, me doing my chemistry, all of those sorts of things. So, and there were some days I took mental health days as a kid, especially in high school, and she would take me to the community college that she was attending, and I'd sit in on classes. So I had this tiny little window into what it meant, but had zero knowledge of what it meant to come to like a research university and to take advantage of all the opportunities that we have here. I went to a really supportive high school where it was throughout my whole life, I was going to college. My family said that, my teachers set that expectation. So that's what I did. But the nitty gritty of the day to day was definitely a huge learning curve for me.
What was it like navigating the UIC campus as the first generation student of color? Tell us some stories and experiences. What difficulties you encounter? What barriers did you face?
I think the barriers I faced was like finding community. I was an undergrad in the mid 90s when we didn't have very much of a campus community in terms of like we didn't have nearly as many students living on campus as we do now. And I had my apartment was behind Hawkeyes on Taylor Street, so it wasn't that far. But I found spaces to be in. I found spaces in the honors biology program, the biology colloquium, and then soon the women's studies department.
Veronica, as you're entering this new phase as a student, trying to figure everything out, what were some of the things that you were learning as far as like maybe some of the mistakes you were making, some of the lessons that were coming up for you? Is there anything like that shows up for you as I ask the question, as you're, new into the campus, new into the system. And also, again, kind of bringing back the idea of entering a field, right, that maybe doesn't represent you all the time.
The things that I remember keenly is that I was just really scared to ask for help, and to ask questions other than what should I do, and then just do it. I'm the oldest of three. I was very early on was told that what I did was role modeling for my sisters. So very much a rule. Like, I had a line to walk, and I tried to walk that line as much as possible. And so that meant doing the best I could, and almost showing no fear and a lot of things or doubt. So that's right. I tried to do that as well, in college. And there were definitely times I fell on my face and just had to pick myself up, but really didn't know how to. So I really empathize with our students who are struggling, especially right now. And I'm trying to throw them lifelines, and they're ignoring me because I'm sure I ignored a few lifelines myself.
Yeah. Was there anything that made you kind of break through to be able to access some support? What would you say now? Yeah.
I think having these kinds of conversations. My research advisor at the Field Museum, we went on we went out to the field. We went to Bermuda for a week to a field station, and we had a lot of great conversations during that space. So I think that as much as possible, students should find time to have one-to-ones with faculty, with staff, and get to know their story and tell their story.
I mean, one thing, asking for help, this theme came up over and over again in all the storytelling circles that I hosted with students. And across the board, regardless of the racial, ethnic, and cultural backgrounds. And I think as human, there's always the element of, the fear to ask for help. And this is a great opportunity for you, as a role model to what were you afraid of when you say you were afraid to ask for help? What was the psychological barriers that you were noticing in yourself?
Oh, it was just the classic perfectionist not wanting to ask for help. If I asked for help, someone was going to say you don't belong here. When I was working on my master's, I actually went to a faculty member for help, and he was like, "How did you get here?" So if I had heard that as an undergrad, I probably would have been out. But because I heard that later on, I was able to just brush that off and pretty much never spoke to him again.
Interestingly, I noticed that among a lot of students of color, they would talk about, and you pointed out, when you say you're afraid that people will question that you don't belong here. And I think a lot of students of color really carry that baggage where they feel they become the representative, right, of their group, whatever that group that people are categorizing us into. Did you also have that fear? I remember when I was a student, afraid to be seen as a representative for international students or for Asian students. If I mess up, right, as a faculty member, if I mess up something, people would think, this is how Asian people are. Did you also have that fear where you will become so self-aware how you might be seen as the representative of a particular group?
Absolutely. I definitely felt a lot of pressure as a Latina, as a woman, as first generation college student, and just so much pressure on me. As I think I said earlier, that the expectation of me going to college was absolute throughout my life. So failure was not an option. So that really weighed very, very heavily on me.
As you think about your journey, and now that you are the director of a specific program serving Latinx folks, how does that how does that impact your current journey? How does that feel? What comes up for you as because you were on the other side of that in many ways. Can you talk a little bit about the way that you being now leading this effort kind of manifests for you, specifically serving Latinx folks in STEM?
It's complicated, but it's a lot of it's a lot of trying to give myself grace by working with students who look like me, who have had the same journey, have had the same challenges, and talking them through it, and being vulnerable with them about my own journey and letting them know that they're not the only one who've done this. Asking them to let me guide them around the landmines, and continually going back and reflecting on my stumbles, mistakes, whatever you want to call them, and learning to be okay with that. I'm someone who, I really do, if I make a mistake, I will not forgive myself for a very long time, very hard on myself. And so having to go through that with students on a regular basis is actually pretty good.
Well, I think you're bringing up a really important element, which is how do we take care of each other, of ourselves, and also how we're kind to ourselves. Is there anything that got you to that place? Is there anything that you can share that got you to a space of grace, of forgiveness, of just kind of? Is there anything that comes up for you as I ask that?
I think it's surrounding myself with people who have given me a lot of grace, who have surrounded me with love and support, and don't let me be so hard on myself. Yeah.
Do you point out something, and I think it came up when we were talking with Mario as well. The whole representation matters, right? You are the role model, and as a teacher standing in front of the classroom, I know when students see me or see you or see Moises, they are seeing their future, right? That our presence enables them to envision a future for themselves. And you mentioned about being vulnerable with students. It's not easy to be vulnerable with students. How did you navigate that? Do you feel comfortable sort of talking with students about yourself being vulnerable, reveal your flaws, and how does that work for you? How does that work for you?
So when I did the shift from being on a scientific track to being someone who works on diversity in STEM, so much of the research and literature talks about how some of the barriers that happen in the classroom is that science professors stick to the science and don't talk about themselves. So I really brought that to my work. So when I talk to faculty, I do mention talking about themselves. If you're running late for class, don't blame it on traffic or a long coffee line. If it was your kid who took too long to get their shoes on in the morning, say that, because students need to know you have a life outside of the classroom, outside of your lab. And so I bring that to my work. So I think I've always rooted my work in vulnerability in my own story, and knowing, I think it helps students understand where I'm coming from in my advice and my guidance if they know that I've walked part of that path already.
It is so important when you say, tell faculty members to sort of reveal their human side. For example, when we think about how female faculty members in science, and that's across the board in all disciplines, that they're not just faculty members, researchers, and scientists, they're also mothers, right? They're also caretakers, right? And oftentimes it is men in academia who are able to afford to be seen, right, as the individual, right? Because they don't necessarily take on the responsibility of caretaking, caring for children. And that's so important when you mention that. That is, we're not just teachers, and particularly that burden is on women, right? And I also know you have children, right? How do you navigate that role, bringing that, right? And a lot of women don't necessarily want to acknowledge the fact that they have family, they have responsibility, for fear to be seen as a burden. How do you navigate that and encourage faculty members to say, it is okay, we need to change the culture, we need to think about create a culture of care, so we don't just think of human beings as individuals without other, right, people around them? How do you do that?
I think it's easier here at UIC. Our students are made up of we have so many students who are working their way through UIC, who are still living with their parents, their siblings. So they have complicated family life, as if you can consider traditional college students. And so talking to faculty about how their real lives and how they are managing a full caseload of courses on top of picking up their sister after school, helping their grandmas get to doctor's appointments, all of those sorts of things. And then to say, it's okay if you talk about your kids, whether you're whoever's parenting, in the classroom. Let students know that you are also juggling those sorts of things as well. And I do the same thing in my work. My daughter is a senior in high school, and there are so many people on campus who have watched her grow up because I bring her to work, I bring her to events, those sorts of things, which is why she doesn't really want to come to UIC, because she knows everybody. Everybody knows her.
She doesn't want to be supervised.
She does not want to be supervised.
by faculty members and by you, right? Now, it's interesting. You have published in Bitch Media. You have produced a podcast on feminism, right, in STEM. And so, how does your feminist identity, and I hope I don't assume that, I look at your post, I read people's posts, I just don't say
We're fans, we know.
That's how I get to know people, right? That I'm assuming you identify as a feminist. How does that feminist identity compel you to raise your daughter differently? And
my
to
God.
yeah, I'm interested in how do you, she's the future generation, how do you raise her differently? How do you differ from your parents?
Oh, wow. That's a good question. I don't know how I differ from my parents as much as, because I was the oldest of three girls. I was always expected to go to college, and I was raised with this, like, you can do whatever you want to do philosophy. But I didn't have the language of feminism when I was growing up. And so raising her with that language, I think, is the biggest difference. Bringing her to protests, bringing her along with me when I'm organizing in the community, knocking on doors to get out the vote, those sorts of things. That may be the biggest difference. But my mom was fairly active in the community as well. So I think I just raised the stakes and raised the notch. And as I said, gave her more of a vocabulary, maybe more of a historical sense of where these things are coming from.
Love that. What you're making me think of is that we're in this really interesting time and complicated time and intense time. And as we think about your work, as we think about climates, environments we're navigating, I've been asking this question. I want to ask you too. What are you hopeful for? What's coming up for you as we're navigating this complicated time? Is there anything you're hopeful for? What are you hopeful for?
I am just hopeful for the end of all of this, and so we can all be together again. That's really what's keeping me going day to day, is that this can't go on forever. I know it. It's not going to end soon. Um, but I am hopeful for next summer that we can be back together, um, hanging out outside of BSB, having a barbecue, sharing food, grabbing burgers, that kind of thing.
Yeah, the connection, the community piece is
yeah.
right. Yeah.
I mean, it's interesting. This reminds me of a conversation. Even though we're physically distant, in some way we're surviving in solidarity, right? In spirit. I mean, we may not be together, but we talk about it. How do you nurture yourself? What's the source of a source for inspiration for your spirituality? And you can define spirituality in any way you will like. How do you center yourself and take care of yourself in this time?
I don't feel like I'm taking very good care of myself right now. And that's because I had a very active self-care routine beforehand that involved going to a gym on a regular basis. And right now I'm cut off from that. And I'm not replicating any of that at home. But I do start my day mostly with I make myself a good breakfast, and then I listen to a meditation app before I dive. I try to do it before I dive into work, so at least I take a few minutes to breathe and center myself. And then try to stay as connected with friends as possible. I'm really lucky. We live in a 2-flat, and our upstairs neighbors are our best friend. My best friends are best friends, and so we have this really tiny pod. So we don't see them every day, but we see them enough. It's really nice.
I love that.
You make me feel guilty. I haven't exercised for such a long time. I haven't done self-care. Moises and I were just talking about, we just want to get through October, right?
I know.
We need to slow down. We have too much to do. And right now I can't think ahead to November. I just want to get done October.
Yeah, it's all of those things though.
Absolutely.
We have 3 minutes left, and I think the question we really want to, maybe one of the final questions we ask, and Ada, you can also jump in, is any wisdom you want to share with the audience, anything that's coming up for you on your journey in navigating academia and navigating the world, anything that comes up for you that you want students, faculty, and staff on the campus to know and to be reminded of?
I would like any of the students who are watching to understand there's a reason why so many of us stick around. Is because this community is amazing. There are people I work with on a regular basis who I have known since we were undergraduate students. That's how much we just love this campus. We love this community, and the kind of students it attracts. And so if you haven't talked to somebody, if you haven't talked to a faculty member or a staff member, just talk to them, ask them about their story, especially those of us who have been here a couple decades.
I love that, Veronica, because one of the questions sometimes we get, some of us who've been here, are like, what, like, kind of what keeps you here? And I think that those of us who've been able to work on the ground and have had and know the stories of the people and the students we serve, it has an impact, right? And there's a purpose. And so I appreciate that. And I just want to say that I absolutely adore you as a colleague and a friend. And, I think you're someone I can also connect to on campus when it's those times that are rough. And so I just want to honor and uplift that, because you're absolutely right. Like there's heart to be found. And I think you're part of that pulse, just so you know.
Thank you.
Very good. We have 1 minute left. Gosh, at the end of our interview, we survived it. It's always so nerve-wracking before the event, right? Perfection. So trust me, like I'm sitting on the edge, just want to make sure nothing goes wrong. Why don't we just go around and say how we feel about the interview and how are you feeling? And I can wrap up this conversation. Veronica, how do you feel right now? How are you feeling right now?
I'm feeling really energized. I was not energized beforehand. But I'm really energized. And I do want to plug the fact that I am moderating a GWS panel next week on feminist futures. It's on the 21st at 3:30.
Absolutely. Join the event, but slow down. Do something, but slow down. Moises, how are you feeling? We got through another interview.
Fantastic. It's always there are always gems that come out of the conversation, and I'm just reminded of community and belonging and the importance of that. And so, I mean, it's one of the running themes of our lives and our journeys, but I feel like it's always a good reminder to remember to reach out. That has been a message that's been the theme for this week in many ways. That we did a program on out engineering, and that was a big theme, reaching out for support and help. So I take community support and help as a theme to consider. I'm grateful. Ada, you?
Gosh, I'm so thankful, so grateful. This is really about getting to know people one step at a time, one story at a time, one person at a time. You really can't rush, right, with intimacy, vulnerability. It really takes time to build, but this is why we're doing this, one person at a time, a very different kind of a lunch break. So I want to thank Veronica and Moises for being here. I'm so blessed and so grateful for the gift today. Bye, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye. Bye.